Hello, and welcome to the Suite Solutions Advanced DITA webinar on increasing findability with subject schemes. My name is Miriam Brand. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Suite Solutions, and I'm very happy and pleased to introduce Yitz Gale, who's our DITA software architect, one of our DITA experts, and he's going to be discussing findability with subject schemes with you today. Before we begin, I would just like to cover some housekeeping items. Everyone is muted, but you can ask questions in the question box. That's also the place to let us know if sound is not coming through clearly or if there's some problem. And we'll address your questions at the end. We should have 5 to 10 minutes for questions at the end of the talk. So with no further ado, I'm just going to introduce Suite Solutions, the company. So we're a leader in intelligent content delivery, and of course intelligent content delivery depends on intelligent content. And as we know, intelligent content is usually DITA content. What we do is we help organizations deliver quick access to relevant information and thereby improving the customer experience and, of course, reducing costs. And we do that through solutions and services built on intelligent content and built with DITA. And we have many multinational corporations and public organizations who have already benefited tremendously from these services. And now I'd like to pass the microphone on to Yitz. Yitz, would you like to begin?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about subject schemes and semantic search. So since I represent the geeky side of the company, I'm going to just quickly go to this slide here. And 1 second. Okay, here. There we go. Now I showed that. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going on to, this is what we're going to be speaking about now today. Increase findability with subject schemes. So we have a few different parts of this topic that we'll speak about today. First, we'll talk about why subject schemes are important. And then we'll talk about how to create a subject scheme, and then how to create a classification map, which goes together with a subject scheme, as we shall see. And then we'll see an example of findability, of finding content using semantic facets, a semantic search, which is created by creating a subject scheme and a classification map for your DITA publication. Okay, so why are subject schemes important? Well, findability of your content is crucial, very important, and we'll talk about why findability is so important. We'll talk about what findability we have in traditional publications until now, in before DITA and in traditional DITA. And then we'll see how semantic search makes your content more findable. Okay, Miriam, would like to speak about findability being crucial.
I would. Now, if you're here already, you probably already know that findability is pretty important. The fact is that studies have shown that customers will leave within minutes if they can't find the content they need. And even more than that, and what we found with a lot of our customers is they've invested in content and they don't know if anyone is even reading it. Frequently they find that people aren't reading it because they can't get to it. Just putting up the content in some form isn't good enough. The point is, as you know, the point is for people to read the content. The point is for people to get to the content. And without findability, they just can't. Hey, Yitz, take it away.
Okay, so traditionally, how do people find content in a publication? So the first thing that a reader will encounter is the table of contents. A talk is a very good way of finding content in the publication. It's a structure that makes the information in the content seem organized. It presents a framework in which the reader can think about the content and understand it, and the person can navigate through from the most general idea down to more specifics until the reader finds what the reader is looking for. However, that's all fine if the structure in the talk happens to exactly match what this user is trying to do, and if this organization matches the use case of that user. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. There are many, hopefully many readers of our publications, and they each have their own use cases and their own needs and their own ways that they need to think about the content, and the table of contents isn't always exactly the right organization to help navigate them through the content. So one solution to that is to have multiple talks for different kinds of use cases. DITA supports that with multiple DITA maps. And you can then you can present different structures of the content, and users with different needs and different contexts can navigate using the talk differently. However, separate DITA maps, at least according to at least using the traditional means of publishing a publication, means multiple versions of the entire publication. And even if we would have some new technologies for publishing publications with multiple DITA maps in some other way, it's still going to be limited. There's only so many talks that you can create, and there are potentially infinitely many ways that users could need to use the content and think about the content. So multiple talks are very limited in a way to solve the problem of different use cases. So the more general way to access the information without relying on one particular structure of a talk is the index. An index is something you'll always, if you look up something index, you can find what you're looking for. However, that requires that you know what to look up. You have to know the right term. Or if you don't know in advance, you can be skilled at trying to think of what to look up and do multiple lookups until you find what you want. Some users have that skill. But index also isn't always the right way to find your content in a particular use case. Finally, we have full-text search, which is a more modern way to find content, which we know is very powerful. However, at the end of the day, even though full-text search is perhaps a little more convenient to use than an index, at the end of the day, the logic and the conceptually a full-text search really is very similar to the idea of an index. You have to either know or find the right search term in order to get to your content, and it may not be the most comfortable way or easy way for the reader to find the content. So the solution is semantic search. Semantic search means that we use facets that have meaning. You know what? I think Miriam is going to do this slide, right, Miriam?
Okay, sure. The idea of semantic search is that that you're using facets that have meaning for the user, and the idea is that on the one hand you have filtering based on different things that have meaning for the user. You're not constraining them to one particular thing that you think is going to mean something to them. They can choose what's meaningful for them. They filter it based on the meaningful facets, and you're not constraining, unlike a talk where you have to have a specific order of looking for something in order to find what you need. They can choose any order of facets in order to narrow it down. So actually I'm going to take the screen over for a second and show you what I mean. I hope people can see my screen. I think you're used to this site. Can everyone see it? I hope so. This is the Zappos site. Here, if I look for just women's sandals, which is the sort of thing I might look for in a table of contents, if we had a table of contents of shoes, I would find 4,421 women's sandals. That doesn't help me much, right? But if I scroll down here, I can find all sorts of ways to narrow my choices. If I say, well, the only thing I'm interested in is a size 6. I'm looking by size. The width automatically changes according to what's available in that size. The styles, now I can see that there are only 139 athletic styles in size 6. Now notice that I could have chosen the athletic before choosing the size, right? I could have chosen the occasion before choosing the style. There's no constraint here, and if I don't care about size, if I just want to see all the styles of athletic shoes there are, that option is available to me. It's not constraining the way I would choose something. It's giving me all sorts of different ways to facet, and it shows me right away whether I have some results, because everyone's had that feeling of they look for something and then it says 0 results. And for whatever reason, it always feels like a failure. Like, what do you mean 0 results? Did I do something wrong? In this case, it avoids, really a good faceted search will avoid that feeling, because it will show you how many results you have based on your facets before you get to that empty screen that makes customers feel bad even if it's illogical. Okay, so I'm going to pass the mic back to you. Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to get some just in terminology straight. That by a facet we mean a subject that the user can select in order to narrow the results of a search. So a facet is can be by a checkbox or some other interface. But so a facet is a subject that the user can select to narrow the search. Let me move on to the next slide. And so let's see. In order to create semantic search, the author needs to classify the information by subjects and provide facets for the users to be able to select. So in DITA, we have DITA provides a way that we can provide this information and this classification. The DITA spec already has a facility for semantic search, but it's a little bit less known than some of the other parts of DITA. You can see here in the DITA specification. If you see in the left pane, we have our the structure of our talk for the DITA 1.2 specification. So under language reference classification elements, we have subject scheme maps, and subject scheme maps can be used to define hierarchical taxonomies, which are subjects. And then the next item in the talk is classification domain elements. These are elements which can occur inside of a regular DITA map. A subject scheme is a different kind of XML document, a special type of XML document, which is not a topic and not a DITA map. It's its own thing, its own XML. It's an XML document that you would create, XML file that you would create to create the subjects. And the classification domain elements are map elements. They're elements which can occur inside of a DITA map. And the classification domain elements are used to identify the subject matter of content that's referenced in the map. We recommend that you have a separate DITA map, which is used specifically for this purpose, separate from your main map. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to talk about a classification map, which is a separate DITA map, which is not used for creating the talk, or creating the structure, the structure of the publication, but it's used for classifying the topics by subject. go back to our presentation. So we have a subject scheme, and we have the classification map, which is a DITA map that contains classification domain elements. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next topic, which is creating a subject scheme. So let's see what a subject scheme, an actual subject scheme looks like. So a subject scheme is an XML file which is one for each publication or even groups of publications, one for a content set, and it creates a taxonomy. What is a taxonomy? A taxonomy is a hierarchy of subjects, and this hierarchy is represented in XML. Each subject in a subject scheme provides a nav title, which is the name of the subject, and that is what appears as a facet in the faceted search for a user to click on or select to limit the search to that subject. And then each subject also contains a key, which is a symbolic name for referring to a subject within XML. This is very similar to the way that keys work for a key ref or a con-key ref in DITA. So as we see, a subject scheme is a XML file, and it has a doc type. It's defined as part of the specification as a subject scheme map, and it's supported in the standard DTDs for DITA. And the root element of a subject scheme is subject scheme, as we see here. Now, so let's say we're on a site which is presenting your content, and the user may see something like this. So here is a category of subjects of facets that can be selected. This is the product name. We have a product called an IMS, we have a product called a CSC 3300, and we have a product called an ATS 9900. So first of all, the product category of facets is represented by subject head as a child of subject scheme, and that's a child of subject scheme, and it has a nav title of product, and so that's what appears above. The all caps in this case are created by CSS styling. This string product from the XML actually appears here on your site to give a category of facets. And then we have, let's just, as an example here, won't do all of them, let's take the third one, which is the product ATS 9900. So as a child of the subject head element, we have a subject def element. That creates an entry in the on the site, which is has a checkbox. It's a subject that can be checked, not just a category. So that's a subject def as opposed to a subject head. Here we also have a nav title, which ATS 9900, which we see above, and then we also have a keys attribute, just like a key def, for example, may have a keys attribute to define the name of a key. So here also for a subject def, we have a keys attribute, and then this prod-ATS 9900 is the symbolic name for the subject, which we will be able to refer to later elsewhere in the XML. Now, we notice here that these products have these little triangles next to them, which suggest that this is actually can be opened up into a deeper into the tree, and in fact that's the case. If we click on the triangle, we see that there actually are facets here for different versions of the ATS 9900. So in order to create that, we have in the XML more subject def elements, but they are children of the existing subject def element. So you have the ATS 9900 subject, And then as children of that, we have the two versions, which are themselves just subject-def elements. You see these are empty elements, and then we close the parent subject-def. So that's how we get this tree of facets from the subject scheme file. So the subject scheme defines a hierarchy of subjects that can be selected in a faceted search, but because it's recorded in a structured way as a XML file in a standard format, that definition of the subjects can be used directly to also generate the interface itself that the user sees. So it's single sourced. We have the subject scheme XML, which creates both the interface that we see for creating the facets for users to select, and also used, as we shall see, for classifying the actual content and making that faceted search actually work. Okay, so now we've seen how to create the subject scheme. The next step is to create a classification map, which we will then use to in order to associate the subjects that we defined in the subject scheme. Right? So classification map classifies the content according to the subject scheme, meaning using the subjects of the subject scheme. We need to know which parts of the publication, which topics in the publication are associated to which of the subjects. So the classification map is an XML file. In fact, it is a DITA map. It follows the DITA map DTD. But as we saw in the specification, DITA map, the DTDs actually support classification domain elements in a DITA map, and so we can use this to associate subjects to topics. So each entry, classification entry in the map will associate one subject to one topic, and then you can include many entries for each topic, or none, but any number of subjects can be associated to each topic in the publication. So let's see how that works. So here is a snippet of a classification map that corresponds to what we saw before in the subject scheme. So first of all, of course, it's an XML file. We see from the first line, and it's a map. So the actual DTD here is the same DTD that we usually use for a DITA map. And then, just as in a map, we'll have a topic ref, but in the topic ref, we have a child element called topic subject, which means that this topic will have the following subjects associated to it. So in this case, we have subject ref key ref. Here we have the familiar key ref attribute, just as what we use for key refs and counter key refs. So we have key ref, but here the key refers to a subject, not to content. It refers to a subject from the subject scheme, and that's the key that we defined for the ATS 9900. And then we have another subject which applies to this topic, which is this particular version of the ATS 9900, and that's the key that we assigned for that version. And of course, there can be many more subjects here as well. Okay, so now that we've seen a sample of how you can create a subject scheme XML file to create the subjects, create a taxonomy, a hierarchy of subjects, which then become facets on the website where your content is presented. And we've seen how to then create classification maps for particular publications. There'll be one classification map generally for a publication, and the classification map then shows how to associate subjects to topics within that publication. So now let's see how that all works. Let's find some content. So so here's an example of a site where we have some content here. There's a familiar search box for a full-text search, the conventional full-text search that people are used to, but then we have a little control here we can open up. It's called Advanced Search. And so here we have categories and facets which can be used to narrow the search. If we select, let's say, the ATS 9900 product, so that means that when we now click on search, even without any text in the search box, the only topics we're going to get are the topics which relate to this particular product. So here's our search results. We have now the facets are now represented in the left pane, and we have the search results in the right pane. We can see in the left pane here under product that the ATS 9900 has 1,379 results in this particular topic set. Actually, you can also see that here in the right pane at the top. These are all results. We can using these tabs narrow it down that way. But if you look down on the left pane, there are other facets which have different numbers of results. Here, if we would select the CSC 3300 instead, there would be 1,652 topics. And then if we look a little bit further down, if we want only topics that apply to an audience of an installation technician, so that will narrow it down from 1,379 results for the ATS 9900 to only 274 results, which are the ones among those which are relevant for an installation technician. So I'm an installation technician. I'm going to click on this. I've narrowed my results down to 274. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and then what I'm actually, as an installation technician, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be configuring a device. So I'll click on the configuration facet, which is there's only 122 results now, and I click on that, and then the numbers all update themselves, and the results narrow down, and now we have only 122 results as promised. And you can see up here also, now we have only 122 results. And then the other checkboxes have numbers which will show what will happen if we would add checkboxes to our narrow down. And if we want to narrow it down further, we can combine a faceted search with a text search. So let's say what I'm trying to configure here in this device is a fan. So I can type in fan. And then now we've narrowed down to only 27 results. I will easily find the correct topic in the content, which is what I'm looking for, configuring the fan that I'm looking for while installing an ATS 9900. Okay, so that's how we can use subject schemes and classification maps to create a faceted search, which is, as we described before, taking the idea of a TOC, of a table of contents, to the next level. I will point out also that this semantic search can be used by users even to create their own TOC, their own version of the document with their own custom TOC themselves, once they've selected the content that they want, they can select individual topics, and create their own custom version of the publication with just the content they need, with the talk structured the way that they want it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Yitz. That was great. Now is the time to write in with your questions. Joe Gelb has honored us with his presence as answerer in the background, so some of you have received answers already. But if you have any final questions, now is the time. So I'll give you I'll wait a minute and see if anyone has any more questions about any questions? It looks like that presentation covered everything that you could possibly know about findability and subject use. Here's a question. Okay, great. First, how does the Open Toolkit use subject schemes? Yitz or Joe?
Hi, this is Joe. I hope you can hear me okay. Mm-hmm. My experience with the toolkit using subject scheme has been relatively limited. I might not be updated, but my understanding is that the functionality embedded in the toolkit supports mostly using subject schemes to limit the possible values in metadata and also conditional attributes. So, for example, there's several different ways you can use subject schemes. What we presented here is one way, meaning using it for a faceted search type of application. But you can also use it for constraining the list of possible values for conditional attributes. I believe that my understanding, and I might be wrong, but my understanding is that up until now, the toolkit has supported that second use case more than the first.
Okay, I see that there are a bunch of questions now. Joe, do you want to pick which questions we have time to answer?
Sure. The second question was, how does a user create a custom talk? So in the interface or in the application that Yitz Gale has shown us, which is an application that we've developed and we provide to our customers, is there's a way that you can basically pick out specific topics or sections of topics and then create your own collection. And by doing that, you create a collection that you can go ahead and publish. Next question is, and basically, so as you pick up
Joe,
as you pick up different topics, then you would basically be building your own table of content. And maybe if he logs in, he can show that how that would work.
Yeah. Can you see my screen still?
Yes, we can.
That. Yeah. So I picked one of those fan topics about configuring a fan, and I clicked on. Let's go back. I'll do it again. Fan tray. So here this is one of the results about configuring a fan. I clicked on that result, and we opened up a preview of it here in the search screen, and then I clicked Add to My Docs, which is this link here near the top of the preview, and then now if I go to the tab at the top here, My Docs, at the top of the screen there's some tabs, and one of them is My Docs. So I'll click on My Docs, and then here this fan tray topic we now see in the left pane appears as part of my publication. If I go back to the results, and I'm going to pick another topic, the next one, fan modules, open that one up, I see a preview of it. I'm going to add that to my docs as well. Okay, now if I go to the My Docs screen, now we see both of them are here. Now I can select the second topic that I added to my docs, and I can use one of these arrows. I can move it in. So now we have a hierarchy, a tree, which I created myself. Me as a user created myself to make fan modules a subtopic of fan tray. And I can move things using these arrows that we see here just above on the toolbar. We can move topics in and out, up and down, reorder them, and add more, get rid of them, and we can create very easily and intuitively create a complete talk of a document customized for that particular user using topics that the user selected using faceted search.
Hi. Okay. Thank you very much, Yitzhak. The next question is, do we have examples of public sites using this faceted search with Oxygen? So the truth is, you can make this subject scheme map using Oxygen as an editor, or you can use other editing tools as well. Oxygen does have a nice interface for that. We also have provide some of our customers a way that you can create a taxonomy in Microsoft Excel and then convert that automatically to a subject scheme file. So no matter how you get to your subject scheme file, yeah, there are examples of public sites. Most of our customers, they have their sites behind the firewall, so only customers are allowed to get in there. But we can provide you with an example. One example is, for example, docs.radvision.com, docs.radvision.com. That's one example. Another question, do you have to assign the product key first when you assign a version key? So really, if I understand the question properly, so we used product and version as an example, but as you saw in the demo that Yitzhak showed, you can really create any number of facets or hierarchical facets in your taxonomy, whether it be by audience or task type or components or whatever is relevant for your product. And how you organize them, whether you have product and then version or the opposite, is really up to you. Regarding the next question, yes, go ahead.
Joe, I have perhaps that the intention of the question is whether you can assign a subject from inside the hierarchy without assigning the parent. Which and the answer is yes. You're not constrained by a hierarchy in assigning subjects using the keys. You can assign any subjects from the subject scheme to any topics in any combination. There's no restriction on the hierarchy is used only for creating the hierarchy in the user interface for the advanced search and for the facets, but it's not does not constrain how you assign subjects.
Okay, very good. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, next question is, I'm not quite sure about implementing the classification map, which is a separate map from the main map. Do you reference the classification map in the book map as resource only? So yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, generally, I think the best, like you just mentioned, a good best practice is to keep the classification of the topics in a separate map, and the hierarchy that you would use to publish your content into some kind of output, whether it be PDF or help or to knowledge base, you would save that that hierarchy as a publication map or book map or whatever you use. I think one of the reasons why you'd want to do that is because, as you mentioned earlier, you can reuse topics in any number of maps for publishing, right? But you really only want to be able to, or require yourself to classify that topic once. The classification of that topic should more or less be the same, no matter where you're using that topic in any kind of publication. And yes, what you would do is you could reference that classification map in your book map as resource only, and that would tell the publishing tool, whether it be the toolkit or whatever, to provide that classification map to the tool, whatever tool you're using during publishing time.
Actually, with our tool, it's not even necessary. If you keep the classification map separate from the other DITA maps, so then it's not necessary to reference it at all. Upload, when you upload a publication, the classification will be automatically applied without it being referenced in the maps.
Right, but that's tool specific implementation. Does the subject scheme map also need to be referenced in the book map? Answer is no, it does not need to be. Really, the subject scheme map is really used for driving faceted search in some kind of a tool in this case, and does not need to be referenced in the bookmap. Can you show us the coding at the topic level? You had shown the coding. Maybe you can, while I'm speaking, you can show up your slide. Go back to the slide which had the classification map. So really, you do not code any of the classification inside the actual topic. There's at least at this point, as far as I'm aware, there's no availability in the DITA spec at this point to classify the topic inside the topic itself. Now, we've seen some CMS vendors, so one in particular, that does implement subject schemes, and they do embed the classification inside the prologue of the topic during publishing time as a keyword type of interface. But the DITA spec has no way of actually coding it inside the topic level. However, the classification map, as you see on the screen here, you classify the topic inside the map underneath the topic list. Because that's really the topic level that is available at this point in spec. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions. Someone's asking about the URL for this example. We can send it out. Does the output
Joe, maybe you can put it out in the chat to everyone now.
Okay. So maybe you can do that while I'm speaking. Does the output automatically create the faceted search capability? Or how specifically do we implement it? And does all content have to be done at the same time? Okay, so really it's again, it depends on which tool you're using. We have a tool offering, and there's other companies who have tool offerings that support subject teams, as far as I understand. So really, the faceted search capability is dependent on the tool that you choose to implement the subject scheme. I hope that's answering your question properly. Does all content have to be done at the same time? The answer is no. What's cool about subject schemes and the model here is that because the classification is done outside the topics themselves, they're done in a separate map. So that gives you a lot of flexibility to do that classification without having to open up every topic, without having the author. For example, let's say you're an author and you created certain topics. The person who's the taxonomist, or the person who is classifying your content, does not necessarily need to be the person who actually wrote the content, which really allows you to use content in different contexts, even content that you don't own. Because this is the DITA standard, and we know DITA is reusable and modular, so you could also, and because the classification map is a map, it's a DITA map, it's a specialized DITA map, but it really is a DITA map, you can modularize how you're classifying your content, and you can choose to classify content in different ways depending on how you're publishing. Again, based on either using the resource only when you're publishing, etc. So there's a lot of flexibility about how you're doing it, or who is doing the classification, when the classification is applied, and not having to classify everything at one time. I think that concludes all the questions. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to field them. Regarding the classification, maybe I'll ask the question that maybe some of you guys are thinking about. But the classification map that you see here is standard DITA, but it's really kind of difficult to do this by hand. I mean, you could. There's no problem with doing that, but it's a little bit tedious. So what we've done, and we've tried as a tool, is a ability to classify your content inside of a Microsoft Excel file, which is a lot easier to deal with. And then what we have is a little AND script or XSL, which turns that Excel file into a classification map based on your subject scheme. Okay, so again, if you have a CMS that supports subject schemes and gives you a nice interface for classifying your content using the subject scheme, and I know of a couple different CMS vendors who do supply that, then you're all set. If you are not using one of those CMS tools, then another possibility is, and if you're interested, you can be in touch with us directly, is we have a tool that allows you to create the classification inside Microsoft Excel, and then by pushing the button to run the transformation, it will automatically transform it into a classification map. Okay. Miriam, I think there's no other questions, so I think we can wrap it up.
So just to let you know that if you missed any of this presentation, I will be sending out a link as soon as it's available online. So that should be in the next day or two. You should be getting a link to the recorded webinar as well that you can share with your friends. Thank you very much, and thank you to Yitz for his wonderful presentation. And please let us know if you have any further questions. We're here. Thanks.